Hello, everybody, and welcome back to That Rugby podcast. You are joined by the two lads of Sports Booth, myself and Hughesy.
G'day.
How are we going?
Yeah, doing well, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm a bit rugby lifeless, I guess, at the moment. Like, obviously, we've come to a draw with most of the rugby season ending. Obviously, in the Europe, they're still playing their seasons away, but for us in the Southern Hemisphere, I guess a chill time. Take a moment of reflection. A lot.
So it's the first time without rugby in a while for us, it feels like. And,
it does.
It's hard to know what to feel at the moment because there's no, well, at least in the Southern Hemisphere, there's no breaking news or anything like that, really. But I guess that means that we do have to shift our attention to the Northern Hemisphere.
And, I mean, they've allowed us to shift our attention pretty well, haven't they?
Yes,
because
they have.
They've dropped a couple of, I would say, massive news bombs.
Yes.
Let's start with a Southern Hemisphere man doing the dirty work in the Northern Hemisphere and being told he's no longer going to be doing that dirty work. Eddie fucking Jones.
Yep. Yeah, Eddie Jones sacked, which we thought, I think last week we were saying, like, the Undertaking's review, like, it's going to put pressure on Eddie Jones when he's trying to coach for the World Cup. Turns out no. Turns out no pressure on him at all because he's not going to be there. I did a few scans of the old reliable Facebook comments and social media comments about this, and there's no middle ground on this one. People seem to be pretty evenly split between this means that England is down the toilet for the next World Cup, instability, they've only hired his assistant, so what was the point of sacking him? Nothing's going to change. And then the half, it's coming home. You know, Eddie Jones was the problem, not his system, and his assistant will do a better job, etc. So there's no middle ground of like, oh, I'm worried about what this could mean, you know, but hopefully the lads can pull together. No, it's either doom and gloom or we're winning the World Cup, which is classic England, really.
Yeah, very, very English of them. And I said it pretty passionately on the podcast last week that I just don't understand, or it might have been 2 weeks ago. I don't understand where you're coming from as England. There's no one, in my belief, better out there. Like the better out there, Scott Robinson or Ronan Angara, I don't think, take the job. So they're going to end up with, I think it's Stephen Borthwick, who's the contender to take the job, which, I mean, I don't know. Eddie Jones plans for World Cups.
Yes.
He plans for World Cups. He got you to a final at the last World Cup. Mm-hmm. He sits at a 73% win rate. To compare that to a couple other coaches out there, Steve Hanson's at 86, Graham Henry 85, both coaching All Blacks teams. I would say have probably a slightly easier schedule when they get to play the Wallabies rather than Six Nations teams. But still, Razzie Erasmus sits at about, I think, 65%, but only a short stint. Even the Sir Clive Woodward, 71%. So he's got a better win rate than what many would call the best ever English coach.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and I go, he's brought, I think it's 1 Grand Slam, 2 Six Nations, a World Cup final. Going into a World Cup where we've said England have the easy side of the draw if they take care of business. Do you not think Eddie Jones was preparing for that? Like, it's great. It's great for a New Zealander because two teams we despise, Wallabies and England. And I know Eddie Jones is Australian, so it feels like it should feel good, but it just feels something doesn't feel right. Like he must have gone into that. His job I don't know. He couldn't have said anything to keep his job in my mind. When they called that review, he was going to get fired because I imagine Eddie Jones would have put on the best. This is literally where I'm leading us. We're going to win a World Cup, and they've gone, we don't believe you.
Yeah, I think. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that because I know Eddie Jones, and it's sort of widely reported he's very stubborn and it's his way and that's it. If he's coaching, we're doing things his way. So I reckon they would have gone to the review and said, you've done this, this, and this. We don't want you to do that next year in the World Cup. And he probably would have just been like, even if he agreed with the moves, he probably would have just on principle said, no, I will make the decisions. I'm the coach. You can either deal with that or you can fire me. And so they were like, okay, well, you're fired then. I reckon that to me sounds more like it, where they wanted to they wanted to change his style of coaching, and I don't necessarily agree with that because I sort of agree with his logic. Like, he is the coach for a reason, and he's got his assistants around him who are giving him advice. But at the end of the day, the decision should be his, and he shouldn't be bound by an agreement with the board or whatever, because that it will be constantly playing on your mind as a coach when you're trying to make positional decisions for games and things like that. Like, oh well, I said to the board that I wouldn't do this, but then if I do it, but I feel like I really need to do it, and if I do it and it goes wrong, I'll get fired. If I do it and it gets pulled off, they'll probably praise me, but I'll still get yelled at, kind of thing. Like, you don't want to be going into that with any sort of strings attached to it. You want to have a free hand.
Yeah, 100%. You know,
and we've even seen it play out in Australia with Checker, and the provisions put in on him by Rugby Australia, where they had to have a hand in selections and things like that, and things went downhill from there. So
I guess my biggest issue with this and the way England Rugby's handled it, the way it's going down, is if you do not win a World Cup at the next World Cup, it's a failure.
Yeah,
because Eddie Jones got you to a final. So
exactly,
even if you get to the final, if you don't win that Rugby World Cup, it's a failure for England Rugby. That's all you've pretty much said, because Eddie Jones got you to the final. Eddie Jones has shown he can get you to a final. So I would have put it in a borderline that Eddie Jones will get them back to the final. That's what I think a lot of people were thinking. Eddie Jones is going to get this English team back to the final when it gets to push come shove. Can they win it? Maybe. Now, you fall at the semi, you say you don't even make it out of your pool. Say that happens. What a disaster. What an absolute disaster for England Rugby. And or shot themselves in the foot. I just don't see it, because you have to, it's Rugby World Cup or nothing now.
We looked at the Rugby World Cup bracket a couple times, and their side, they were likely going to play Wales in the quarterfinal, Wallabies in the semi-final, right? For England, that's two teams they've beaten this year, right? And who would be their obstacle to get to the final, right? So that Eddie Jones can coach and beat those teams, right? You look at the other side of the bracket, and it's going to be one of Ireland, South Africa, France, or New Zealand in the finals, right? And those all four of those are quality teams, but he can beat them, and he's shown that he can beat them in his coaching record. And
not only can he beat them, those four have to get past each other to get to that final. So they're coming, like last time we said, England's semi-final win over the All Blacks at the 2019 World Cup was their final. Like, to beat the All Blacks, to knock them out of the World Cup, someone's going to have to do that beforehand and then beat England, or the All Blacks are going to have to knock over those top teams and then beat England. Like, it's, if we're I look at it at every direction and I go, was this season that bad that this was needed? I just don't see it. I don't see it. If I'm Rugby Australia at the moment and I go to Dave Rennie, I go, how about we try and get Eddie Jones in your corner?
Yeah.
Why the bloody hell not? Like, why wouldn't you now go, look, even if it's just overseas things, you're still our head coach, we'll just bring him in as an advisor for the World Cup. Yeah. If anyone knows how to win a Rugby World Cup or get to a Rugby World Cup final, because the same question can now be asked. Imagine that. Imagine Australia's lead to this Rugby World Cup final is, like we said, semi-final against England, most likely. So now you've got Eddie Jones in your corner.
Who was coaching England.
Knows everyone's weaknesses, knows everything. Yeah. All of a sudden, you're 1-1 away from a final, and if anyone knows how to get you over the hump of the final, Eddie Jones. So if I'm Eddie Jones, I'm not that annoyed. Like, if anything, unless England won the Rugby World Cup, and even then there'll be questions, Eddie Jones could have taken them there. Like, I think this has helped Eddie Jones.
Well, he's
legacy.
Yeah, he's got options. Like, he said he wouldn't mind trying to coach rugby league, wouldn't mind coaching USA rugby. I'm sure he'd love a return back home to Australia and things like that as well. So really, it's opened up a world of possibilities for him. And I'm sure he feels probably a little bit of relief as well to be away from the constant media hammering and attention. And I agree. I would think it would be great to see him in some sort of advisory role, but you'd have to make the boundaries very clear, and that Dave Rennie is the head coach kind of thing, and make that very clear from when you did bring Eddie Jones in, if they do that.
He is like at the moment, Razzie Erasmus is probably like the more hated guy in rugby, like seen as the villain. You could see him as a villain because he cries wolf, Eddie Jones is like that neutral evil where you're like, you shouldn't like him, but he's entertainment.
Yeah.
Like, I could see him, you know, leading the WWE. Like, that's how, like, he just knows how to, for the sport, he's really good for the sport, for that entertainment purpose. Like, he knows how to play with the media. He knows how to get things ticking. He knows what to say. He knows when to say it. He knows how to say it. And will it get under your skin? Yeah, more likely. Will you probably not like him? Yeah. But he does a bloody good job of it.
Yeah,
so
100%.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting time for both England now that the split up, what the breakups happened, who's going to rebound and where they're going to rebound, who's going to rebound quicker, who's going to hit the gym and get the six pack, and who's going to end up crying over a tub of ice cream.
Yeah,
I heavily see England crying over a tub of ice cream. But that wasn't the only coach let go.
No, it wasn't. The Welsh head coach, Wayne Pivac, is that how you say it?
Pivac? I don't know how to say it, yeah.
Well, yeah, he was dropped as well.
Which
which one
isn't a surprise.
Yeah, that one's less a surprise. That Eddie Jones, everyone's a bit like, oh my god, they sacked Eddie Jones. Wayne, a bit like, okay, yeah.
But it's also that Warren Gatland's coming back in, who saw the most successful part of, got them to a semi-final in 2011 Rugby World Cup, got the Welsh team to the semi-final, I believe, in that. So Warren Gatland was their saviour. He then left to come back to New Zealand, going back there. So you can understand why they're trying to do this. It wasn't a good season for Wales. You know, I rated them as an F in our last podcast, and it wasn't a good season for them. But compared to the English, we still haven't heard. They're ongoing the search. So they didn't even have an idea of who they're going to be hiring next. Wales came into this and said, look, we know what we want. We've got what we want. It's time to move on. If Warren Gatland wasn't available or there wasn't a coach better, I guarantee they wouldn't have done that. But they got what they wanted. So, I mean, I think, yeah, as you said, deserved. But it'll be interesting for Wales. Like, Gatland, as great as a coach as he is, and as much as he's showing for, especially coaching the British Irish Lions and everything, Wales aren't in a good spot at the moment. No. So how he's going to get them and turn them around will be really interesting to see.
Yeah, they're going to need to really plumb the depths of their talent. It'll be tough, and they're on a tough side of the bracket of the World Cup, as we said. But well, I guess tough for them really because
either side would be tough for them.
Yeah, either side would be tough for them. Yeah, but sorry, their pool is tough because they're with Australia in their pool and one other team that might make it difficult for them.
Japan or someone like that. I can't
No, not Japan. Anyway, it's not going to be easy. Fiji. So it's not a gimme for them to get through.
No. And if they don't get through, that'll be a massive disaster for Welsh rugby. So, yes. That wasn't... well, there was actually some news from the Southern Hemisphere. And I would consider this good news.
Yes, I consider this good news as well. I'm just going to say one last thing about Warren Gatland before we move on. He's actually said that he's backing Scott Robertson to take over the All Blacks.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's meant before the World Cup, but I think he's put his seal of approval on Scott Robertson to take the head job at the All Blacks.
Yes.
And I feel sooner rather than later. So maybe if there's a disappointing result for New Zealand in the World Cup.
Oh, yeah, no. I think what he's saying is New Zealand Rugby sign him to a contract now, either internally, after the Rugby World Cup, even if it's a good result and we win it, I think they're saying, look, what's the future like? Let's be honest, if we win it, do we think Ian Foster should stay on? As an All Blacks fan, no. I probably wouldn't want Ian Foster still on after the World Cup. Like, I think the better things to go start anew. Even if he hits and wins the World Cup, sail off to the sunset, you proved all your doubters wrong.
Yeah.
And then start fresh with Scott Robertson. So I think that's what Gatland's expressing, is get him on board before in England.
Yeah.
Because if England, that would be the only thing that changes my mind on this whole situation, that they win the breakup, is if they rebound with a Robinson, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
Super Rugby.
Yes, Super Rugby has been formally extended until 2025, and then the pieces are in place for it to be extended out to 2030. So it's official. It's confirmed until 2025.
Yep. With
the revenue sharing and all that, and then the options are there to extend it to 2030. So pretty much on the table until 2030.
And a 12-team format has been put across, which I like, is the fact that they've done that. I will be hopefully releasing a video at the end of this week or maybe next week to say what I would be doing with Super Rugby if I was in charge. But I think this is a good start.
Yeah.
They needed a bit more stability around this competition. They've got it. I actually like the idea of, the more and more I think about it, is a 2-division system. I think we could get 24 teams between us, have a promotion relegation system in place, and have some, I guess, I reckon, exciting footy. Now, I think that would work, but I think there's a lot of things that need to be discussed for this to happen. But I like that we're going, we've got these 12 teams, let's lock it in. I definitely think there's a opportunity now to talk to Japan Rugby, try and get our competitions going at similar times, so we can get a midweek, Asian Super League going type thing like that. But all of these ideas, I'm sure are getting discussed at the moment. Having the format down now to go, yes, we have this 12 team. I still want 6 teams in the finals. I don't want 8 teams in the finals. I think that needs to be revamped. I would do like first 2 teams get by, 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5, then winners play. So on and so
makes
forth.
Sense.
But it's good. It's really good. And we'll be doing a lot more Super Rugby chat will be coming soon. Your Waratahs looking pretty good, mate, to be fair. Darren Coleman having to come out today and actually, I guess, put some water on some flames of people saying that this is a very, very good Waratahs side and they should be doing exceptional things. And he actually came out with what I thought was a fantastic quote. And this is why he's starting to make me like him a little bit too much. He goes, a year ago, you guys were telling me I had the worst squad in Super Rugby.
Manage expectations. Well, they've just unveiled as well today their new facilities and everything like that. Looking schmick.
Exactly what you need.
Yeah, exactly what we needed to get those players back from rehab and everything else like that. Like, you think about the amount of talent that's been injured throughout the years, the year for the Waratahs, and by extension then the Wallabies. Angus Bell and Lockie Swinton, the first 2 that come to mind. Right? You think about that talent that's been lost. Michael Hooper was unavailable for most of the Waratahs season as well. He's come back. Kirtley, he's rejoined as well.
Nandolo, that's going to be scary.
Yep. So I'm looking forward to a good year from the Waratahs where last year it was sort of every win was a blessing because the year before we didn't win any games. Next year the wins should start to become more expected, and the benchmark for Australian rugby at the moment is the Brumbies. Right. And I've seen actually a couple of interesting articles that I sort of didn't really think about before myself, where they were saying because the Brumbies have had so much success in Super Rugby Pacific over the last 2 years, that perhaps the Wallabies have started to become too much like the Brumbies and not enough influences from the other teams. And, some of the Wallabies' best players this year were actually from the Waratahs, new people stepping up from the Waratahs, Parecki and Marky Mark spring to mind straight away there. And so I think it'll be good for the Wallabies as well to have the Australian competition less of a one-team, a one-man band 100%. Kind of situation. So, for whatever... The Queensland Reds last year were very disappointing, and I haven't really seen anything to make me think any differently of them, that they will improve this next year.
No, I tend to agree. They were disappointing. And this is going to be the North Queensland Cowboys of the Super Rugby comp, where I go, Brad Fawn obviously gets a lot of respect out of his players, and he tends to be able to turn players, I don't want to say aren't special, but aren't high radar name players into really good players. But they have lost a lot of key pieces. I know Hamish Stewart was off, but they've got a really talented group of youngsters coming through. So I don't think they'll be too troubled. I think they've got the best Super Rugby Australian halfback in Tate McDermott, because I think that the style of Super Rugby is obviously very different to international rugby, and he suits Super Rugby style really well. So I don't know. Yeah, again, we'll dive a lot more deeper into these teams and the squads later on. But yeah, the Waratahs, like you said, it's not even just should we win. It was that Crusaders game where you go, okay, the Waratahs, they're back, baby.
Yeah.
Like they are a team to be.
Rugby Australia needs the Waratahs to do well.
Yes.
Because New South Wales is the biggest revenue base by far for rugby in Australia. And when you're getting people more back on board and supporting the team again, that's when things will really start amping up again. And, the Waratahs used to be one of the most respected teams in New South Wales. Now most people couldn't give two shits about the Waratahs, right? But once they start winning again, which they have done this previous year, as we said, the Crusaders game was a big one. Once they start getting that bit of the following back again, getting more members, getting more people into the stadiums and things like that, I think that will benefit Rugby Australia as a whole.
I must say, I do hope Ndolo spends a fair bit of time with the Waratahs if they do end up playing in the Shoot Shield, because I've seen he sign for 2 Blues, and I do not want to be coming up against him. Imagine charging him running at a little old white boy like me. No. He'll break me. So, yeah, hopefully he spends a fair bit of time with the Waratahs.
Yes.
The Sevens also getting a much needed revamp, and I really like this. And I think this could open up a couple of opportunities, which I enjoyed. They have taken it down from 16 to 12 teams. They've narrowed down less tournaments. So, like, New Zealand's lost its tournament, which I don't think is a bad thing. What I kind of compare this to is our Sevens is like the Formula One of rugby. So, Sevens is the Formula One. Formula One takes the cars to different tracks. I think this is a thing that Sevens should be doing, where you have your, let's say, 5, 6, 7 guaranteed ones, and every so often, every year, you choose a couple. So once every 4 years, you come back to New Zealand or do something in New Zealand and get that hype going. 2-day tournaments, 12 teams. I think it's going to be 4 pools of 3, and then it all just works itself out. Not so much rugby, but a lot more good rugby. It's a shorter period of time, party atmosphere back, the shiny, speedy rugby, kick it into gear, which I think is a very good idea. I think Sevens has the potential to do a very IPL version of cricket, what I would love to see. And with that is, I don't know where you'd run it again. I'm going to use IPL. Let's say India got a fascination out of rugby. It obviously doesn't. Japan may be a good one. So let's say we had a Japan Sevens circuit, and you had a handful of professional teams. You made high money, high value, this big event, ran over 3 or so weeks, and it's just this big festival. Now, I think tens would make the game really work well with that. I think that's where our opportunity is, because Sevens, it takes a very specific person to make Sevens and stuff, and you don't want to take away too much for the Sevens circuit. But I'm all for an opportunity for the IPL is really good for cricket for players to make money, and I'm all for if we can allow our players to go away for 3 weeks, have a good time in Japan. I'm just going to call it Japan. Play some tens rugby, make some good coin. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Like, I think that could be our IPL, where our 7 circuit's doing what the Formula One doing, and we're just doing it all as a rugby code, I guess.
Yeah, it's speaking of making money and paying things, like the other really important part of this Sevens change is that men and women will be paid the same.
Yes.
Which, I mean, I watch the same amount of men's and women's Sevens, so it makes sense to me. The women's Sevens is very exciting as well.
And they're playing the tournaments together now. Yeah. So a lot of the times you'd have them kind of go off on their own circuits, which I didn't like either. I think it's all men and women bang on the same ticket revenue, then everyone's get interested. You could put men's final on or women's final on at the last game, and I wouldn't mind. Like, that's you're going to stick around. So as long as the New Zealand women find a way to beat the Australian woman, I wouldn't mind that. So
yeah, we've got that one thing. Sevens, yeah.
Women's Sevens, yeah.
Our men's Sevens do pretty well as well.
Well, I mean, you won last year with an asterisk because we didn't take part, and then you've backed it up with a 5th place first round. So, I mean, like, 5th place, like.
All right. Can't have one thing.
You can. Women's Sevens. Golden Girls.
Yeah.
I've got 2 things to say. So I asked some questions, and I got, other than your ridiculous question.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
The question where, why is that Hughesy guy so much better looking than Luke?
That's a great question,
Not even a
anonymous
question.
viewer.
Yeah.
It's a great question, anonymous viewer. The key is a proper skincare routine.
What you're saying, I don't have a proper skincare routine.
I don't know.
So the other couple of questions that I actually we're going to highlight on the podcast today. First one, favourite rugby player to watch this season?
To watch this season. Okay. It's a good one. For me, I'm obviously going to pick someone on the Waratahs. Probably Charlie Gamble.
Oh, yeah.
The moustache just does things to me. But also...
What does it do to you?
Also, he's a great player. So him or either of the Waratahs wingers, Nwanga Nitawase or
I was going to say, I'm surprised it wasn't Mark straight off the bat.
He's up there. I feel like that's the easy answer to give, though.
It is. Yeah.
So, like, the
Charlie
sort of
Gamble
given
was a good one. That
I'm
was
trying
a good one.
to think of like something other than the obvious answer. But yeah, he's definitely up there because look, he's got more motivation than anyone to do well this year because if he does well enough, he will be rubber stamped into that Wallabies jersey. So yeah, it's those two, and then from outside of the Waratahs, I feel like Tate McDermott needs to have a big year to solidify himself as the number 2 or even possibly number 1 Wallabies halfback. So I feel like he's going to step it up this year.
See, I like all of those. Those were good. I have a couple. Will Jordan for the Crusaders was fantastic to watch because he was an excitement machine. Like, just incredible rugby player. I actually really like watching Angus Bell grow for the Waratahs. I thought
he was my next one. Yeah.
Definitely. Like, I'm again not a Wallaby supporter, not a Waratah supporter, but what Angus Bell's doing at his age, with all the hype around again Taniela Tupou, I don't want to take away from him because he on his day Taniela is fantastic, but what Angus Bell's doing at his age for a front rower. We could be talking the next 15 years about Angus Bell. Like,
and I want to highlight as well, because it doesn't get talked about too much by us or by anyone really, but not only how he's growing as a rugby player, but what he's doing off the field. He's got a number of foundations, one of which I see him running, I think it's Helping Hand or something like that, where he spends a lot of times with kids with special needs and helping them to play sport and to fit in and be active and things like that. So not only is he... And look, he's what, 21, 22?
I think 21.
Yeah, so super young, and a lot of athletes at that age are not thinking about charity or doing anything like that, and that's what he's doing with his time. So I think that's absolutely incredible to highlight what a credit he is to rugby, the Waratahs, the Wallabies, on and off the field. So
definitely,
exciting to watch for more than just his on the field
100%
play.
And his on the field play is pretty good at this year.
Yeah.
But obviously, my favourite rugby player to watch this season, Artie Savia. There's no doubt, best player in the world. When he put on that gold and black jersey for the Hurricanes, I don't care what World Rugby say because World Rugby are filled with old, angry, bitter men that they can't understand. All this Polynesian player is dominating. All right, that happened. Just select them. All right. Okay. Settle down, Luke. So obviously that was my favourite player to watch.
Yeah.
Second question that I highlighted and quite liked, and it's going to be an interesting answer for you. I'm going to give you my answer, and I think it's off the back of, I think it was Sterling Mortlock who said this. Do you think the Wallabies can actually win the 2023 Rugby World Cup? Now, Sterling Mortlock said, no, we can't, after I think it was the Italian loss. I'm going to go ahead and say no. I don't think you can. Now, saying that, I think the draw is obviously in your favour. And if you can get past and into the final, yes, I can see it. And we've just discussed how those tough teams have to play each other. But I don't see a way where you guys win it. But saying I don't see it. But if it happens, it wouldn't be like the most surprising event as well. I don't want to sit here and say, look, you got those 4 teams, South Africa, France, Fiji, New Zealand, all in the tough side. I think one of them probably wins it. But they all have to take each other out. Then you've got England and Australia. So I go out of 6. These 4 have a bit harder. So I one and like it'd be a 33% surprise kind of rate. I'd be like, I'm not a fully like, oh my god, 100% surprised, but there is some surprise there.
I'm obviously going to say that the Wallabies can win the World Cup, and you've made a lot of good points there for me, including the draw for Australia. So I think the draw makes it more realistic, and this is why I think they can. Right, so they should finish top of their group. If they finish top of their group, they should have a relatively easy quarterfinal.
Yep.
And then they'll have a semi-final against England.
Yep.
Who they can beat.
Yep.
They can beat. Then the final is going to be either, realistically, Ireland, France, South Africa, or New Zealand.
Yep.
I think any of the three teams other than New Zealand,
you can beat.
The Wallabies can beat, and they've shown with these narrow results they're right up there with them, despite being less than 50% strength. Right. I think New Zealand, there's like a psychological block there that until the Wallabies get over that in the Bledisloe or at other levels, it's probably not going to happen at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Right. So, but my proviso to that is New Zealand's got to go through those other teams as well. Mm-hmm. And who have we seen them lose to recently? Ireland, South Africa, right? And France has been undefeated this year.
Yeah.
Now, and the World Cup is in France as well. So that plays in the France. So it's a gauntlet for New Zealand to run through to get to the final, right? And I think, as you mentioned previously in this episode, with all those teams having to run through each other, there's likely to be injuries, likely to be tough games, might expend all your energy before you get to the final. So I think that sets up Australia in a really good position to be able to do it. Now, that's not where I would be putting my money, but when you're saying, can Australia do it? So that to me says, is it possible for Australia to do it? Or even, is it slightly more than impossible? And I would say yes. I would say, for me to say that a team that can't win the World Cup, I would say there's the Wales line, right?
Yeah.
Where Wales have got the talent to be able to make a run at the World Cup, but I don't think that they can win it, right?
I think we fucked this up.
Yeah? Have we?
Yeah.
We've been chatting absolute shit and not knowing what we're talking about?
Yep. Winner of Pool C plays the runner-up of Pool D, which England, Japan, Argentina. So that's Australia. So you'll play that. Then semi-final is winner of quarterfinal 1 versus winner of quarterfinal 2, which is South Africa, Ireland.
So wait, is it quarterfinal 2, the Pool C and Pool D one?
The semi-finals switch back over.
Oh, that's weird.
No, it's not, because I was thinking in my head that is weird. Like New Zealand and France could meet in the pools and in the semis, but they can't.
Okay.
So it's just a weird way of doing it.
All right. Well, we're gonna have to reanalyze all of our predictions then. Okay. Wait. Let me.
So you say you win your pool, you win a Pool C, so you're in quarterfinal 1. Then in semi-final 1, you play the winner of quarterfinal 2, which is the winner of Pool B, South Africa or Ireland. Play the runner-up of New Zealand or France. So in your semi-final, you're going to have to play one of those 4 teams.
I still think that as long as it's not New Zealand, we can win that. Honestly,
so that I think makes a lot more sense. We've been so high this whole time.
Yeah.
Never take advice from us about the things we're trying to talk about, which is specifically rugby.
Yeah.
Guys, because fuck, we're stupid.
Yeah, so... Yeah, for me...
That was all of us talking about Eddie Jones having an easy side to the draw.
Yeah. Not so much anymore. Yeah, again, it doesn't really change my answer too much anyway, because as long as I think Australia's boogeyman is the All Blacks, and as long as we don't have to face the All Blacks, then I think Australia is all right.
South Africa showed you can win a World Cup without having to beat the All Blacks.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, it is still can. And as I was saying, the line for me is Wales rugby, right? Like Wales, it's like when you're in the Wales and Scotland tier.
Yep.
Right, you can cause damage at a World Cup, but I don't think you can win it.
Fair enough.
Right, and then I think above that you've got the 6 teams that we talked about: France, Ireland, South Africa, England, New Zealand, Australia.
Yep.
I think any of those 6 teams can win, and then anyone below that
would take something special.
Yeah,
Leicester City.
It would be miraculous. The next closest I would say would be Argentina.
Agreed. I agree with that. I just think it's even more impossible than I thought it was before. So now my surprise rate has gone up to beyond 50%. Oh, how has that happened? We'll just finish this on the podcast and pitch to the black screen. The camera's just died, team, for everyone listening on the podcast. Stay tuned on our Instagram. I just pointed to the camera. But
I saw that. I saw that and I laughed inside, but I wasn't going to say anything.
Camera's off for all those people who are listening on the podcast, but I did point at it. But actually, you'll be still watching the video on YouTube, so I did point at you.
Yeah, you just can't see it.
You just can't see the points, but make sure you check out our Instagram, where the top 100 players has now become an aggressive point.
Which, I mean, really, to check out our Instagram is the point that you're trying to make while you're pointing at the camera that's not on. So the real point here, folks, is to check out our Instagram. Where can they find our Instagram, Luke?
On Instagram?
Oh, yeah, but what's the tag, Luke? That's what I'm trying to say.
At the Sports Booth.
There you go. That's what I was looking for. You got to plug the specific things.
At the Sports Booth, everywhere. Find us everywhere at the Sports Booth. We are the Sports Booth.
Yeah. Easy. That makes it easy for you.
It is. I think we discussed this last time. I think it's our 1 year anniversary.
Yeah. I think today is actually.
We did our first podcast. We were more broader on sport last time. And I will be thinking up some ideas over the Christmas break and discussing with Hughesy to bring some more sport content to you guys rather than just rugby. But for now, it is the rugby podcast. Yep. But yeah.
We could talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and Atlanta Falcons if you want.
No, we'll move on from that. Just a rugby podcast. Thank you for joining us today. It was one hell of an episode. We won't mention American football ever again on this podcast.
See you guys. Peace.